So welcome to episode 3 of the Real Roadmap podcast. My name is Liam Rose, and today I've got a very special guest with me. His name's Steve Pullen. He's a family friend of mine, and we've known each other for a very, very long time, since I was a child, actually. And Steve has managed to build a business over the years, and I've watched him do it as a young man, and the days of him turning up in super sports cars to the house were fond memories to me. And it's a pleasure to interview Steve today to talk about how he managed to build a business that was in the 8 figures. So welcome, Steve. How are you?
Very well. Good morning, Mr. Rose.
Are you keeping all right?
I'm all right, thank you.
Good.
And you?
Yes, I'm doing all right. I'm quite excited because whenever we get on the phone, we seem to end up having a really in-depth and deep conversation. Or if we go for a coffee, it's never just a 10-minute coffee. We cover all ranges of discussion, such as how you've lost so much weight. I mean, we talk about this quite often. You've really got yourself into some great shape. How have you managed that?
You want me to start there?
Let's start there.
Start the end.
Start at the end. I mean, yeah,
It's not really the end for me, because it's ironically it probably underpins a lot of this interview, this conversation, because it's part of my psyche, part of my makeup as to how I lost weight, part of my focus.
Sure.
And dare I say it, my OCD behaviour.
Yeah.
So if we're starting at the end, and I appreciate your comments, but you need to take a bit of credit for that as well, because you helped me out midway through my little weight loss journey. But when I finally retired on the 1st of December 2019,
sure,
it was prior to COVID. We didn't know anything about COVID. And I'd planned to do a male Shirley Valentine and travel the world, having finally retired and sold the business in 2016. COVID hit, and sad as it is, because I know a lot of people lost their lives through COVID, but it was probably health-wise the best thing that ever happened to me.
Sure.
Because it allowed me, I couldn't travel, I couldn't do what my little bucket list was. So I decided that I would embark on getting fit and losing weight. And at the time, if we're going to put numbers to it, December the 1st, 2019, I probably was about 14 stone. Not massively overweight, but certainly very, very unhealthy.
Sure.
Because of a frenetic and frantic business lifestyle and not eating properly and focusing what was going in my mouth, and not doing any exercise.
Sure.
So my OCD nature was, I don't just want to go on a diet. I want to understand about calories and, restrictive diets and calorie deficit and what it actually does to my body. And so I hooked in with somebody online, and did some soul searching on how to lose weight. And sure. I didn't naively, and I'm embarrassed to say this, I didn't even understand calories. I didn't understand macros. And I think fortunately, because of my discipline, because obviously through years of abusing my body and eating bad stuff, nothing happened. I was eating less. I was doing some mild exercise, and nothing at all happened for 3 or 4 months. But that doesn't deter me, because of my focus and my
sure.
dedication, which is really what's underpinned my business life, which is, I know what this podcast is all about.
Sure.
Then the weight started coming off. Then I started looking at, okay, I don't just want to lose weight because I don't want to lose muscle. I then want to build muscle. That's when I started talking to you. And that's when you started taking me training, which damn near killed me. If nothing else, at 5:30 in the morning, nearly killed me. And I thought I was going to a real nice little posh gym.
Yeah.
And I was going, well, hardcore,
rough and ready,
yeah, like boxing gym. And the great thing with going with you is you didn't allow me to shirk. You forced me to do things. You forced me to try to build muscle.
Yeah.
And so I guess my journey went from 14 to 11 and a half stone. Intention wasn't to get that low, and I certainly don't want to go any lower, but it's self-fulfilling because I'm as vain, I'm a vain person, and I enjoy looking in the mirror at a 59-year-old who is fitter than I've ever been. And I now exercise every day. I'm not crazy about eating, a lettuce leaf and half a tomato. I don't do it. My body's used to it now.
Yeah.
And corny as it sounds, it talks to me. So if I go out with the boys and have a 4,000 calorie curry and 5 pints of Guinness, the next day my body says, don't do that again. So I've got into that rhythm now. And so a strange way to start at the end of my journey, but it does form part of my focus and my dedication.
Of course. Well, I suppose the reason I asked, I always bring up things like this because initial experience of someone, when you bump into people from time not spent with them and you have lost a dramatic amount of weight, everyone's like, wow, how did you do it? Right. And my experience of knowing you for so long, when I bump into you and I see you in this condition now, I know how hard that is to do. And you've done it at 59 years old, which most people tend to, at 40, draw the line in the sand and say, I'm not doing that anymore. It's not a focus for me. I just want to be happy and comfortable. And what you've chosen to do through that level of self-evaluation, which a lot of people struggle with, you've decided, I'm going to learn this and I'm going to adhere to it. And the very simple fact is, as you mentioned, the only things you did was you started eating less and doing a bit of exercise. And in 3 or 4 months, nothing really happened. But over time, the results came. And if I tie my experience to anything, it's a simple process. It's doing the process that is the hard thing. If you write it on a piece of paper, right, you have to get up and go to the gym. If you don't know what you're doing, just start moving weights around. Do 8 different machines and do 3 sets on each and try and get to around 12 reps on each machine. That's quite a simple metric to do if you're just thinking about doing exercise. Then for food, it's like inherently when you're ordering a Burger King or you're ordering McDonald's or you go and order a salad from Waitrose, when you're out at a service station, you inherently know which the right choice is and which isn't. We just choose to not do it. And what I admire in your strength of doing it at your age is that it's like the capacity for the number to dictate who you are doesn't exist. I'm 59. That doesn't matter. I will do this.
Yeah. It again, it sounds very sanctimonious, but it is hard work.
Yeah.
Because again, as you get older, your metabolism slows down.
Sure.
So you've got to force your metabolism up.
Yeah.
And it really is I just took it to extremes by wanting to understand about calories and macros
Sure.
and what it was doing in my body. But it's quite simple. It's move more, eat less, but do it regularly.
Yeah.
But also, and I'm sure we'll touch on this, in order to achieve things, you still need mentors. I had mentors in my business life. I probably didn't identify them at the start. It's only when you look back on reflection that, oh my God, that person was a mentor. And I don't want to blow smoke up your arse, Liam, but you were also a mentor when it came to that, because seeing, and I'm sure you won't mind me saying this, you've gone through, ups and downs with your body. You've been a bit of a fat bugger occasionally, and then you've looked in the mirror, not enjoyed what you've seen, but your focus and your drive to then transform your body into beach body status, so that is a motivation. And it is, okay, mentor's a bit of a strong word, but you were certainly my mentor going through the gym sessions that we did, and then once you taught me about that, I then started doing it on my own. So everybody needs a mentor. They need somebody to look up to. I've had them in my business career and in my non-business career, as you've started this with my weight loss. Yeah. You were one of those to me,
I appreciate that.
I never wanted to look like you because I knew that I never could. It wasn't, but it also wasn't my goal. It wasn't my goal to have a 6-pack, an 8-pack or whatever. My goal was to get fit, lose weight and build muscle. And I looked to you to help me to do that. And you did.
Well, credibility comes from the external experience of the things that you've done. Like when you go into a gym and you see a PT and they're not in shape themselves, they cater to a certain audience, right? But if you have a specific goal, which is to lose weight, if you're going up to somebody that is in the weight they choose, they're in the physical condition that they choose, that's credibility. And then if I can articulately explain that to you in a way where you're fantastic to work with because you listened, and I didn't do great deals of like diet plans and working with you and all that sort of stuff. We trained in the gym and I showed you posture, technique, timing, positioning, what to look for, what to do. And you already had a good framework there. So what most people tend to do is when they come to losing weight, they actually just want the very shortest version of that because people are lazy. And that's not inherent to their character. The word lazy doesn't necessarily have to be dialed down to an individual. It's a characteristic of behavior of human beings. Just happens because we don't want to do things that are difficult. That is our default mode setting. So when we overcome ourselves, which is ultimately what we do, because if we're looking at it, all I've got to do is not put shit food in my mouth for 10 weeks. And I've got to go to the gym 5 times a week for 10 weeks. There's 50 trips to the gym. Yeah, that's if you have 4 meals a day. I'm not going to attempt to do the maths on it, but it's not a lot of effort and time. What we do is negotiate with ourselves too quickly. Oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, rather than going in the direction of
it's method. You have to have a method, and again, there are similarities between what I've gone through in my body transformation, if that's the right expression, and business. There's method. You have to have method. You helped me with that method. Yeah. My final challenge, and probably, for anybody that's got an addiction, and I had an addiction since I was 18, which was smoking, and so the weight loss and the getting fit was part of me then going into my final mode of giving up smoking. So I finally gave up smoking nearly 2 years ago.
Amazing.
Corny as it sounds, it's probably one of my biggest achievements.
Really?
It really is. By giving up smoking, I feel super excited that I've done it. Yeah, I vape, and I have my own opinions. I'm a very opinionated guy. I have my own opinions on vape. I'm not saying that vaping is good for you. It's certainly not good for young kids. But as a method to give up smoking, it is a brilliant thing. I don't want to move into the whys and wherefores of vaping. So giving up smoking was my last thing to do. And I credit that, and I'm certainly not going to embarrass her by giving a name out on this podcast, but I credit that to my ex-girlfriend who didn't smoke, never smoked. She was massively into her fitness, and I just didn't want her to see me smoking. We were in a really committed relationship, and I realized the smell, the horribleness about smoking. So although she doesn't realize it, she was the encouragement for me to give up smoking. So we all need some encouragement. You gave me the encouragement, on the fitness. She gave me some passive encouragement to stop smoking.
But it's those little moments in our lives that we wait for. The moment where we go, oh, this is the time that I'm going to try this now. This is the time that I'm going to make that change. This is the time that I'm going to move my life in the direction I want it to be in it. And it can be something as simple as stopping smoking. Now, I don't agree with vaping because I've done it. I've vaped for a long time, but then I found it so difficult to stop. But I've smoked for a long time. So as you said, as a method to go from polluting my lungs with smoke, which is awful, with tar and all of the horrible chemicals in it, to then refrain from doing that, as shifting to something better. It's like drinking Coke and then going to Diet Coke to then get onto water.
Sure.
Rather than taking the drastic step of going from one to the other. First, it's reduce the addiction to the sugar. Then it's the addiction to the flavour, and then it's gone. Do you know what I mean? So that's part of the process. And now I've stopped. I've stopped everything. And one day, it just happened. I was just like, oh, I'm not doing this anymore. And it was one thing that I heard on a podcast. It was something that a very controversial chap said, Andrew Tate. He said, like, people are walking around and they're smoking batteries. Like, what are we? We've gone from smoking to smoking batteries. And me thinking about it like that, like, I am just walking around. Like, and if I can't find it, I'm like, where is it? You know what I mean? The volume of nicotine in it is so intense that it, when I stopped, the audible difference in my anxious nature was so different. Like, it was gone because I'm not stimulating my body on a chemical level over and over and over again from smoking or, like, you know, my addiction, my past. You know, I suffered with addiction, alcoholism, food, like every type of addiction I could possibly have had. I've had it and I've dealt with it over the course of like a 10-year period. And to get to the point now where I don't have any external addictions to anything. Now I'm at the stage where I'm working on my behaviors. So we get rid of the stuff on the outside and then we work on our behaviors, which is the internal stuff, the trauma, the difficulty. And again, for me, getting to the position I'm in right now, I've had to go through hell. And I think that's what being an entrepreneur for me is about. It's about deciding to take the harder path. And a lot of the decisions we make aren't necessarily the conscious decision to take the harder path. I don't think every day I'm going to do something more difficult than everybody else. It's just inherent in who I am. I couldn't deal with how I felt. I drank and took drugs every single day. I couldn't handle how I felt. I drank and took drugs every single day for years on end. Then I stopped and then I couldn't cope with how I felt. Then I ate and then I changed that and then I got in shape. And then when I didn't get the result that I needed from being in shape, which was external validation, I needed love, I needed attention. And getting in shape didn't do that for me. And then I was on this, again, it was another destructive path of like, what the fuck is wrong with me? And I finally realized I have to learn to like who I am and accept who I am and stop trying to hold myself to these standards that don't exist for most. And that's what's led me to this moment now where I'm actually building a business and I give less of a fuck what the outside world thinks. I'm just going to pursue what I feel is the most authentic to me. And that's kind of where I think we need to sort of edge into a little bit about your story, because the definition of an entrepreneur is their path from being an employee to being a business owner.
Sure.
And your path, and the reason I was so excited to get you on, is that you went from A and you exited B, and you now have that life that we all fight for. If we're an entrepreneur,
well, every day is a Friday.
Yeah. But
great.
But that's what I want to get to. You know, I want to be able to say I'm retiring. My kids are getting this. My life looks like that. I have no limits or boundaries on what I do. I can still flutter in investments and do things, but I don't have to do anything. And I don't have to work. The most important thing is I don't want to have to worry about money. That's my goal. And the reason I have this podcast is because I want to learn from those that have done it or doing it. My business partner, he was on the first episode. He's just made an exit himself. He's built his business out, you know, and the reason he wants to be in business with me because he sees me and him.
I understand that.
Yeah.
And I understand, you know, when you asked me to do this, you know, I did it because I've been a friend of yours, like you say, since you were a little kid.
Tiny kid.
You know, and that's because I'm such a close friend of your mum and dad.
Yeah.
You know, and if I thought that I could help your career path, albeit this is very alien for me.
Yeah.
Because
you're a very private person.
I am a private person. Yeah. A lot of people confuse privacy with secrecy, you know, and I'm not a secret person. I'm just a private person.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I'm private is because throughout my business career, I've always felt that for other people, my story would be boring. You know, I've never seen my story as some exciting story. What I did for a living, I didn't work in a flash, lovely, sexy industry. You know, I worked and thrived in a very commoditized industry.
Yeah.
You know, and I never felt that my story would be interesting. You know, so it's made me think. You know, when you asked me to do it, you know, it's made me. I won't go into it, but prior to coming on this podcast, I said to you that, you know, I dug out lots of files and papers from back in the day, you know, because I've not revisited them, you know, because I've never felt it that interesting. I'm now quite interested that I've actually started reading about my own career. Thinking, oh, actually, it was quite interesting.
But back then, right, what you did was what you did. Right. Yeah. And here and now, what you do has to be glamorized. It has to go out in the world. What I do for a living, you know, if you're a PT, it's all over social media. If you're a cast, like everything that everybody does to a degree is out in the social terrain, and everybody's fighting for that profile.
It's a different world.
Different world. But what you came up in and the world that you came up in was a different world.
Yeah.
But the world that you've come up in, you've done it arguably in the harder time. Before social media, before building an audience, before you could go on LinkedIn and fucking find someone, before you could do any of those things, you've had to do and be resourceful. And to say it lightly, one of the things that I found so impressive with you is that your client base for the product that you sold. So you might, like, if you can tell us in a sec, what you manufactured, and if you're able to, some of your clients, because you had some really big high street brands.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to tell you all of that.
Let's go. So how did you first? Let's start with the industry you're in, and then how did you get into it, etc. And then you go.
Okay, I'll skirt over some of the early days because the early days just form the springboard, if you like.
How did you get into, because it was sales you started off in, isn't it?
And still am.
How did you get into that?
I still see myself as a salesman. And I think anybody that is in business at the highest level of business needs to be a salesman.
It's competent. You know, it's competent.
They need to have lots of other attributes as well. But mine was always underpinned by being a salesman. So I effectively started by when I finished college, finished doing my A-levels, I answered an advert in a newspaper to become a salesman for a packaging company in Nottingham. Not a bloody clue. Not a clue about the packaging industry. But what hooked me in was there was a company car, you know, and I was 18, you know, and I was skint, you know, and I went for it because it was a company car. And I was interviewed, and I got the job, and I got a pale blue colour of this jacket.
Yeah.
Coincidence.
Yeah.
1.3 Ford Escort. You know, for me,
18. That's a proper car.
That was a Ferrari.
Right.
You know, I was 18. It was brand new. You know, a brand new Ford Escort, and I worked for a firm in Nottingham, selling effectively plastic trays for the food industry. That's my career. Plastic trays for the food industry. Not very glamorous. It's thermoforming is the correct terminology. So you're effectively heating. That's twice I've used effectively in the same sentence. If you can edit that, please. Make me look a little bit better. So you heat plastic, you form it into a shape, and you sell it to a food manufacturer. That's it. So the common packs that you would see now in all the UK retailers are plastic packs for salads, for convenience foods,
meats and stuff like that. Like the trays that you get for meat and stuff.
That was the genre. That was what it was.
Yeah.
And I worked there for 4 years and loved it. I was 19. My boss was a great boss. He was a very inclusive boss. He was an educator. And I think I've tried to, for this podcast, I've tried to understand what then made me want to go on my own. And I think I probably have a better understanding of my own psyche. So what basically happened was, as a salesman selling plastic trays, you got a lead, you went into a customer, and you designed a tray for them. We had a design department, and they gave a volume, and you had it quoted. So we had an estimating department. I was just some young boy salesman with me pale blue Ford Escort, and suddenly this guy, who I still remember his name, gave me a bit of paper and said, that tray that you've asked to quote is £24 1,000. You go into the customer and you tell them £24 1,000. Well, for me, that wasn't good enough. And this is where my inquisitiveness comes in. I'm working for a company that probably employed 30 people, 15 huge machines in a factory, cars in the car park, raw materials coming in, lorries. And I'm thinking, how did that guy get £24 1,000, for that tray out of all of this infrastructure that I'm working in? So I started asking questions.
Wow.
And that's where it started. So how on earth do you get to £24 1,000? He said, well, basically what happens is the fixed costs of the factory are this. Our budget is so many millions. This tray is 20,000 units a week. Therefore, you filter it down and we arrive at a profit margin. We're looking to make about 4% net profit, a gross margin of 28%. And that's what you get, £24 1,000. I hadn't got a clue what he was talking about. But over the coming weeks, I started honing my trade, as it were, and started being nosy and understanding how the estimating department worked. How on earth, from an inquiry to put a couple of bits of fish into a plastic tray to sell to Marks and Spencer's, getting £24, I started getting an understanding of how we got to £24 1,000. Then every morning there was a production meeting, and the production director sat in front of the production board and there were all these tickets on there and the customer wanted it on such and such a day. And I'm thinking, well, how does he plan the factory? Yeah, how does he get all of these orders in and spit out, So I genuinely started being nosy and finding out how on earth this guy planned to run a factory. And then, but the transport company, we've only got 5 lorries, but we've got 400 customers that have weekly deliveries. How does the transport manager, put all of these orders together, load the lorries and deliver them all on such and such? And I started, this wasn't all in a week. This was over a period of time.
Sure.
I was just a naturally nosy person. I remember my parents saying to me that I was like that as a kid. My mum told me once that for a Christmas present, I was given a Mickey Mouse alarm clock. And a day later, it didn't work. And the reason it didn't work was because I wanted to find out how it worked. So I actually dismantled the thing as a kid to see how it worked. And then I couldn't put the bloody thing back together. So I guess from an early stage, I was just a nosy kid.
That's an organic trait that you can assign to a lifetime of inquisitiveness.
It is.
Which is an inherent trait.
It is. So I think...
Do you remember the first thing that you had that with, or is that clock the first thing that you had that with? Do you remember
it sounds crazy, but yeah, I think it was. Yeah. And, you know, and this isn't I haven't created this story to fatten up your podcast. This is where I think I was slowly honing my trade by honing's the wrong word, suddenly creating my skill levels that actually from a junior salesperson at a plastic packaging company in Nottingham, within 3 years, I had quite a good understanding on how the factory worked. It wasn't my job. I was probably a pain in the arse, you know, but I wanted to understand. It wasn't good enough for me to go into the customer with it's £24 a thousand. How many do you want? I needed to know how we got to that. I needed to know how the factory then produced it, delivered it, organised the raw material. Then, 4 years on, I get a phone call from a headhunting company. And I was headhunted to become sales manager of the company in Nottingham, their biggest competitor, who were based down in South Wales. But interestingly, they were a public limited company. They were floated on the UK Stock Exchange, and their chairman operated out of his offices in Baker Street in London. And as sales manager, so I left the company in Nottingham and became sales manager for this company in South Wales. King Kong, as far as I was concerned. I was 23, 24. And I was sales manager of a 10 million turnover packaging company who happened to be floated on the UK Stock Exchange. I then wangled my way from, I didn't like driving to South Wales every day and I wasn't prepared to move. So I wangled my way to actually working with the chairman in his office in Baker Street in London. Listening to his conversation. I'm still nosy. This hasn't stopped. You know, this. I'm just starting.
Amazing.
Nosy. Started listening. Started understanding what a market maker was in selling shares. You know, creating share value. You know, so this guy who was the chairman of the packaging company, he probably didn't even know what a plastic tray looked like. But that wasn't his job. He ran the finances of the business. You know, he spoke to the market makers in the stock exchange. And I started getting interested in that. So I started being nosy on how business really worked, not just selling trays, how a business really, really worked. And my nosiness stood me in good stead. And he took me under his wing. He lives in Monaco now.
Funny that, isn't it?
Yeah. And I still contact him. You know, he's an old man, you know.
So you'd see him as kind of like a mentor.
I didn't see him as a mentor until after the fact.
Sure. Yeah. You don't go in and go, oh, this guy's a mentor for me. You go in and go, like, for me.
My biggest mentor was the sales director of the first company in Nottingham. Right. He was my biggest mentor, and I recognised that, you know, and I learned a lot from him. And corny as it sounds, there are certain things that stick in your mind during your career. And I remember the day I resigned. You know, despite it goes back so long ago. I remember the day. I remember walking into his office. I don't mind naming him. His name was Tony. I won't give his surname. He's still around, and we still have the odd contact. And I remember walking into his office, And I was still young. I know I'd just been poached to be, a sales manager, but I was still naive. I was rubbish. I was useless. I thought I was great, but I was useless really. But I thought long and hard what I was going to say, because I was nervous about resigning, because I did recognise him as a mentor, even at that stage. So I remember exactly what I said, and I remember exactly what he said when I went into his office. And I said, Tony, I just want to say that you've taught me everything I know. Thank you very much. And quick as a flash, the bastard said to me, don't forget, I've not taught you everything I know.
Brilliant.
And that's still, and I'm sure I've probably used it in my career. I'm sure I have. I'm sure I've plagiarized it and used it.
Wow.
But that's what he said to me. Arrogant that he was.
But truthful.
Sure.
So
I then, yes, the South Wales company, working from their offices in Baker Street, the bolt-ons to that's when I got to know London, and I did a bit of socialising in London. So I really sort of came of age. Not only was I working for a PLC business as just a sales manager, that's all it was. It sounds like a glorified title, but I was really learning from the chairman, and learning about business.
did you go out often with the chairman?
Yep.
So, and this is something I'll touch on because I think it's interesting, right? Is networking is seen as this thing that we shouldn't do, this thing that isn't done, this thing that, it's old, it's antiquated. But for me, my business partner, I met him in a networking meeting and we just get on, right? And any other networking that I've ever done has been as a result of me being around people, being myself, and then getting to know those people. And then at some point it's like, oh, we can maybe do some work together, or maybe we can do some business together. And I suppose when you're with a chairman of a PLC, the cohorts of people he's with are going to be slightly different to if you stayed in Northampton and you were down at a pub in Dustin. You know what I mean? You would have options and also invites to conversations you would not otherwise have been privy. That makes sense?
Total sense. And again, I'm trying not to think too much about what's coming in this podcast, because I'm sure you're going to ask me questions, but there is a theme to my career, and that is I am a sponge. I want to learn, going back from my monologue about the firm in Nottingham, wanting to understand it, sponging off people, trying to gather information. Mm-hmm. The chairman of the South Wales company, gathering information.
Not with the intent. Was it with the intent to set up on your own? Did you always know that was a thing? You were just absorbing, and then when you felt full enough, you went,
Never. I did not at the age of 17, 18, 19, 20 have any intention of being on my own. I was just living my life. Mm-hmm. I was working hard. There was an ethic there. I was a hard worker, a real hard worker. Yeah. Work didn't bother me. I sacrificed a lot of social stuff for work, but the work ethic didn't bother me. I had no intention of having my own business.
Yeah.
Again, probably I'm thinking back maybe 4 years in, I then got approached by a business owner in Northampton.
Yeah.
Who he doesn't anymore, but he owned a very successful flexible packaging firm.
Right.
And he saw an opportunity to match flexible packaging with rigid thermoform trays and to effectively sell to his customers a collaborative package. So,
what does that mean?
Like a collaborative package. So when you go into a supermarket and you buy something that's in a plastic tray, it has to be finished off somehow when you buy it. It's either got a lidding film
like
sealed on the top,
or chicken in,
or it's flow wrapped with a piece of plastic. Well, the company in Northampton did the lidding film and the flow wrap, and he had this idea that if he could sell a package to his customers, so he sells the plastic tray as well as the lidding film or the flow wrap, there was a market opportunity.
100%, yeah.
So he approached me and asked me to set up a division of his business to sell this collaborative solution.
Were you guys one of the first to do it?
Yeah, and it
'Cause
failed.
that wasn't a solution back, because it is the solution today, isn't it? When you go into Sainsbury's, Morrison's, wherever, all meat in a tray comes plastic tray.
Yep.
I think Morrison's now do it as a sealed package.
But
like as a wrapper.
they all do variations on it, Liam. The idea that he came up with was a good idea, and he approached me and asked me to set it up. So I set up this division within his flexible packaging firm in Northampton. So I had a staff, I set up the division, and it failed. And I failed. It was probably the first failure, if you like.
Yeah. What did that feel like?
I don't remember.
Bottled it up, boxed it up.
Probably. Yeah. I remember it never felt like a failure. I'm looking back now on it as a failure. You know, it never
wasn't like a culminating moment like, oh, this failed.
The actual division that we set up didn't work. It was undercapitalized. You know, we tried to do it on the cheap, really, which was unfair on him because it was a very, very good business. The idea was great. That division that we set up didn't really work. It didn't achieve the numbers that we wanted it to achieve. I personally didn't fail, and I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but the idea that he came up with, we executed it badly. That's on my watch. I executed it badly. Yeah. However, I didn't leave the business. I then started being, I became a shareholder in the business, you know, and took a senior role within the business.
Yeah.
Along with, he did the same with another guy that was there who since went off and set his own business up and recently exited, and he's a super wealthy guy. Yep. You know, so it was a great proving ground for us. So again, it was part of my learning curve. It was, you know, from Nottingham to the South Wales, London office based, then to the flexible packaging firm. It's all adding into my learning and, you know, adding more strings to my bow.
Yeah.
You know, and the guy in question, and again, I'm trying to keep names out of it. The guy in question, the Northampton, you know, successful flexible packaging firm, taught me a lot, taught me even more about business, understanding, you know, I was probably then at that stage beginning to understand income statements, balance sheet, cash flow forecast. So I'd been a cog up until now in larger businesses.
Yep.
I was now becoming well versed in how businesses were structured and how you make money in a business.
So you're in the senior position in which your realm of understanding had advanced.
Correct.
Beyond,
yeah.
Like I can get sales. Let's bring numbers in.
Yeah.
Now to like what the numbers are paying into the wider.
Absolutely.
The wider thing.
I also at that point had staff. Okay. So because it doesn't always come natural to managers managing staff. You know, you've got to work hard. It never came natural to me. You know, I had to work hard.
Leadership's a huge quality that you have to fashion, isn't it? Because you can't just instruct people
it is.
to think and feel how you feel, the same level of value that you have in that specific initiative that you're putting in place. You need those people to want to do that thing to the same level as you can. 99% of people aren't going to do that, are they?
No, you're right. And there is a constant, up until this point, there was a constant in my career path. Although working for different firms and slightly different packaging genres, the constant was the marketplace was the same. It was the UK chilled food industry.
Mm-hmm.
So right from a 19-year-old up to where I am now, late 20s, my customer base and my knowledge of my chosen marketplace, the UK food retailers and the food packers, were constant.
Yeah.
So I had a name, good or bad, I had a name out in the industry.
Yeah.
Whilst in this position at the flexible packaging firm, unbeknown to me,
Mm-hmm.
this is the bit that you really want to know about. This is business.
You tell me.
This
I'm here absorbing all this.
Yeah, this is business ownership.
Sure.
Coming on to business ownership. Unbeknown to me, there was a very small packaging firm in Aylesbury that was owned by two guys.
I've come and visit you there, haven't I?
Yeah. Owned by two guys. One of them, sadly, had a stroke, a bad stroke.
Mm-hmm.
So the remaining shareholding director had approached some of his customers in the marketplace on the quiet and said, my partner's had a stroke. I want to continue in the business and grow the business, but I need a partner. Do you know anybody that is currently out in the industry that I should be talking to? And he shook a few trees, and my name fell out of 3 or 4 trees within the chilled food industry. So he phoned me and he said, excuse me, I'd like to have a chat with you. I was happy where I was. I was a shareholder of a packaging firm in Northampton. No focused career aspirations at that stage because I didn't need to. You know, I was growing myself. I was in a growing business. I was in a well-invested business.
Yeah.
My career path was going well. I had no ambitions, you know, other than to continue doing what I, you know, why would I? You know, if I'd have chosen to look back at that point from a 19-year-old to a 28-year-old, the graph was already doing that.
Yeah.
So there's no point for me to self-analyze.
Yeah.
So he phoned me up and I went round to his house one Sunday. He told me the sad story about his partner who was still in hospital.
Yeah.
And he said, I remember at the time their turnover was 1.7 million. They employed 12 people. It's a tiny company. I mean, I was
1.7
1.7
for 12 people.
Yeah.
That's massive. That's a big turnover for that volume of people. That's manufacturing though, isn't it?
That's all I've known. Manufacturing.
Okay.
It was food packaging. It was thermoforming. It was plastics. It's what I'd done. And he said, but I need you to buy Bill out. Okay. This was new to me. Am I going to do that then? You know, I didn't say that to him. You know, I said it to myself. How am I going to do that? So we had the business valued, and the business was valued at. I'm quite happy to talk about numbers.
Figures, yeah.
The business was valued at £500,000.
Cool.
So I had to find £250,000. I had no idea how to find £250,000. I can't remember what I was earning, but it's going back a long time now. I mean, I don't know what my salary would be in today's money, so it's pointless me even trying to calculate it. But
it was nowhere near that.
No, nowhere near. No, not even. It wouldn't have even been a quarter of that.
Right. Okay.
You know, and suddenly, you know, I was given the opportunity to buy 50% of an existing growing business, but I had to find £250,000. So I remortgaged my house. I applied and got a few credit cards, maxed them out, took a personal loan from the bank, and somehow or other, I found £250,000 with a huge amount of debt attached to it. Wasn't interested in interest rates, loan repayment terms, didn't care. I just needed £250,000. I mean, very foolishly. You know, if a loan shark had offered me at the time £250,000 on a 25% compound interest over the next 10 years, I'd have signed, you know, because I was only focused on £250,000, very naively, but I got it. And I became, then I owned a business.
So that in that instance, again, so you've shown me, again, something useful for me, really, because you've shown me how you've had to leverage somebody else's money to purchase a business, right? Which turned out to be a profitable exercise for you in the long run. Yeah.
Yep. We had no plan.
No. This day and age, like I've got brokers that I can speak to that can do a management buyout. So you could just say, we'll get him out. The business would front the cost of the loan facility for you to buy in. And then you would pay that out of your divvies or something like that. You would pay the loan repayment out of that. That's something that would be done in this day and age.
Again, there's an awful lot of water that's gone under the bridge.
Sure.
So there are things that I either conveniently or certainly for this podcast, not conveniently forgotten. I suspect, and I seem to have vague recollection, that there were some equity trade-offs offered to me, but thankfully, albeit no real focus at the time, I wanted 50% of the business. Yeah. So I wasn't prepared to relinquish any equity for capital.
I would always say, and this is something that the industry I would always recommend, is always debt over equity, because debt is finite. It comes to an end and you can pay that off. And the interest is the only thing you're paying. But equity, when you give away a share of your business and you grow that, and you say go from 1 million turnover to 10M turnover, and the profit margins goes from, I don't know, you got $250,000 in your accounts to 2 million in your accounts. You're giving somebody a 10% share of that. It's a lot of money.
I think I look back now and look back now with the knowledge that I've got now. And I partly agree with you and partly disagree with you.
Sure.
It's a personal thing. For me, I did not want to relinquish equity.
Yeah.
Not that I'm putting myself on the same page or you know, even in the same book or the same country as, what's his name that owns Amazon?
Oh, yeah.
Can't think of his name now.
Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, I forgot that one.
So Jeff Bezos, and don't quote me on this, I think Jeff Bezos owns considerably less than 10% of Amazon.
I think he's had to do that, though, because of the size of entity that he
has. And that's what I'm saying. That's the difference. He realised that back in the early days, because he had a vision that Amazon was going to be huge and better to own 10% of a massive organisation than 50% of something that he was never going to be able to grow.
Well, that 10% is 100 billion.
We were never in that realm. So I just personally knew, for no tangible reason, yes, there's a tangible reason, but only tangible with my thought process now. At the time, I just wanted 50%.
Yeah.
I think it was probably because I didn't want any less than my soon-to-be new business partner in the same business.
You want a similar operating function to him. Yeah. You want to be able to say, like, let's make a decision. You don't want him to be like, well, I've got majority. You know what I mean? On many levels, that's the position that you don't want to be in, or one doesn't want to be in, because if you're doing a business with somebody, 50-50 is the model. Half and half, we're both equally at risk here. I suppose when you're buying into something like that, all of the risks that you laid out, as you said, you've taken loans, you've done this, you've done that, without a care for the interest rates. You were like, because the end goal was the business, and your uncompromising balance was, I want 50%. I'm not going to settle for anything less than 50%. I don't care if I have to remortgage my house to the hilt. I don't care what the monthly repayment is. I don't care what the total repay is. that's one of the things that is so unspoken about in the world and in the industry at the moment that I work in. It's like everybody wants the cheapest rate for the most buck. And somebody could call me now and say, like, I want to do a management buyout. I get 50% of this company and it's going to be difficult, but I want to do it. You know, when you get into a battle with the rates and this, that, and the other, sometimes the rates are the rates. You get quoted that rate, that's the rate. There's no negotiating, that's what you have to pay. And at that time, you would have said yes. And what a lot of business owners forget in this day and age is sometimes the rates are the rates. The government, the banks, the Bank of England sets that base rate. Anything above that is how they earn money. So it's crazy.
Liam, you're right, but also the balance of power, you know, as you grow, moves with you.
Yeah, of course.
When you're like a 17-year-old, for example, going into a bank to borrow $5,000 for a car, the bank manager will get a book out and say, this is the interest rate. And the 17-year-old will say, thank you very much. If I walk into a bank now to borrow some money, I negotiate. And that's the difference. So going back to so suddenly, this is really the start of my career. With the knowledge that I've gleaned up until now, I own a business. I own 50% of a business. Didn't even know what the hell I was buying. I just at that point, it was the right thing to do. There was no strategic move. Suddenly, I own 50% of a business. Right, what do we do? Who are the customers? Yeah, I did no due diligence. I probably did, but not an awful lot of due diligence.
You didn't even know what that meant to a degree then for buying a business, right?
It was a tiny little company turning over 1.7 million, working in a marketplace that I knew very well. And they serviced their customers better than I'd ever known.
Really?
I'd never known service like it.
Yeah.
And that was the light bulb moment. I realized that service was king. In the food industry, you know, you have to have the stock. You have to be able to service your customers. The retailers are relentless. If you miss delivery dates, the fines are huge. You know, it is...
Fines?
Oh, yeah. Oh, massive fines. Yeah.
Really?
Oh, huge fines. Yeah.
So pressure's on. Cheapest, be the cheapest, be the fastest, be there on time every week without fail.
It is that's the word, it's a brutal industry. So I then realized that if we were going to grow this business, we had to grow it based on servicing our customers. And that was our USP. You know, we serviced to death. If at the time a customer needed 5,000 trays for a new launch and they were in Scotland, they'd be in the boot of my car and I'd be driving to Scotland. Not caring, not even thinking. That's what the customer needs. That's what we've got to do. You know, we had owner-driver van deliveries going everywhere. It eroded our margin, but we built a business and a reputation on service. Word gets round the food industry, we start growing. We start getting new work. Customers started approaching us because of our reputation.
Wow.
We outgrew our premises. We then had to build a new factory.
You built it?
Built it from scratch.
Wow. What was that like as an exercise? If you can recall.
I can recall.
Because that's a brand new terrain, isn't it? As an entrepreneur, brand new terrain. Bought a business. Oh God, no, I fucking build an entire warehouse structure. Obviously, get people in to assist.
What was it like? We were naive as fuck. You know, I mean, we probably made some horrendous mistakes looking back. You know, but there are seminal moments that I remember. I remember the day we moved into it. We had a viewing gallery over the factory. Me and my then partner, two of us owned the business still. We put all of our machines into the production space. And it was like putting an empty bucket in a swimming pool and looking and going, how the hell are we going to fill all of, we had 5 machines or something, but we had the capacity for 35 machines, and paying the costs of a factory as if, so we knew we had to grow, and we knew we had to grow quickly. We moved in, and all new designs that go into retailers, you have to have various things stamped into the bottom of the tray. Whoever watches this now will become boring, and every time they go into a retailer, they'll pick up a plastic tray and look. There has to be a number in the bottom of the tray which tells the consumer what the plastic is made out of. There then has to be a recycling code which tells the customer how much recycler is in there. There's then a number in the tray which tells the manufacturer which casting from the tool it came from in case there's a problem, so you can trace it back for total traceability. There's then a tool number that is stamped in the bottom of the tray. These are all just industry numbers. It's boring for everybody, but you have to do
it's there.
Yeah. So we didn't want, and by EC law, that number has to be traced back to the factory. The day we opened our brand new factory, we didn't want the first tool coming out of there to be named 0001. Me and Neil, my partner, just didn't want it to be 1. So the first tool that came out of the factory, our first code, which is registered at Marks and Spencer's, is 1664. Now, I know it's 1664. And sadly, the reason it's 1664 is because the day we opened it, me and my partner were standing on the inspection window drinking a can of Kronenberg 1664, celebrating ourselves opening our factory.
Wow.
So the first tool was 1664. So they're little
Amazing.
memories. Okay, they're little memories.
Yeah, man.
So it was a single shift factory working 8 hours. And the problem with manufacturing is it's capital intensive, as you know from your day job. And when you're successful, you need more capacity, because when customers give you more work, you need to be able to produce it and manufacture it. And you therefore need more machines to produce it.
And more material and
more material,
everything,
more
staff.
warehouse, more staff. That's your growing pains. Now, at the time, we were working a single shift factory, 8 hours. So the next stage was to go double shift. So you need more staff. So you then work in 16 hours. Then you grow again.
Then you've got to pay those staff in that period of time, right?
Yeah. Now,
Were they on weekly or monthly?
Combinations.
Okay.
Weekly and monthly. We then move into 24-hour, 7-day working. And we couldn't afford supervisory staff. And when you're in the food industry, your manufacturing facilities need to be like a hospital, because you're inspected, because our customers are not the retailers. Our customers are the food packers. So, for example, in Northampton, the biggest food packer is a company called Greencore on Moulton Park.
Yeah.
They make M&S sushi, sandwiches, salads. Mm-hmm. They're our customers. But the retailers have influence over us. So we are audited by the retailers and by the food packers.
Well, they're the ones that are liable when they sold the food to the consumer. Is that
correct?
Right?
So it's a very expensive industry to be in, food packaging.
Margin's low, right? It's volume.
Margin is tiny. It's all about volume. Volume is massive. You move a lot of plastic. I don't remember the numbers now, but we were probably producing 30 million units a week. Of various different sizes. But we were working on 2 and 3% net margin.
But the net margin from so just to put an example, the best year that you had as a business in terms of turnover, gross margin or net margin, do you remember like the best year where you were like able to take the biggest divvy, or do you remember the year that you were like, fucking hell, we've done over 10M. We've done...
Yeah, the best year at that factory in Aylesbury was a turnover of approximately 14 mil
Jesus.
Yeah,
Selling plastic trays is crazy, isn't it?
that's only the start of it. That was just that factory in Aylesbury.
So you ended up with 2 factories and a satellite factory, didn't you?
Yeah,
And your client base then grew.
and we were only 10% of the market usage,
Jeez.
even at our height.
Really?
Yeah, and at our height, it was 95 million.
That's the biggest turnover that
Yeah.
you got to. Wow. See, I didn't know that, and do you know what? And one of the fondest memories that I've got.
We might edit a bit of that down. No,
No,
we'll leave that.
no, it's okay. Well, it's interesting.
I
Because,
won't tell you the numbers that fall off that.
Well, 'cause
at
there's
the moment, all I've done is told you good news.
I can't wait to get to the bad news, but I think this is where I'm just prefacing like some of the stuff that you've got, some of the places that you've been, like because when somebody says, "Oh, I made 2 million," yeah, if down the pub you say, "Oh, the business made 2 million," if business has turned. I've got friends that have turned. I've got a really good set of friends that have taken their drainage company. And I won't talk numbers, but they're well into 7 figures of turnover, which is phenomenal for the first couple of years. Right. But when you talk with a different industry and a different player and at the end of the journey, retired, sold out, and you're hearing numbers like 95 million in turnover. And it's not important, but it's important because 95 million in turnover is like 800. I try to even think what that is in a month. 8 million a month, 9 million a month in the bank. And to watch those, I see bank statements quite regularly for businesses, and to see that amount of money flowing in and out, it's terrifying. And I deal with I dealt with one of my biggest clients.
It's a real difficult thing, and I know we're jumping the gun because you're excited about big numbers, but there's a saying that I've pinched from my FD, my old FD, who's still a great friend of mine.
I'm sure I know what this saying is before you said it as well. I'm pretty confident.
Okay, and he used to say, the difference between working in the business and working on the business. I don't think you expected me to say that.
No.
And when you work in the business, those numbers don't mean anything. It's only when you remove yourself and you work on the business. So the difference between working in it, so you're in that whirlpool.
Yeah.
If you can afford yourself time to remove yourself from that and work on the skill is working on the business. Most
processes, isn't it?
Yeah, most people don't have the time or the skill. I didn't until the latter stages because you're in the middle of it all. So it's only when I tell you now numbers like that, when you're in it, they're irrelevant. They genuinely are, because they're just, you have daily problems. Again, I sound a bit too deep here, but
you're never too deep talking to me.
If you talk about a business being a barrel of water, there's always a leak. When you plug it, the most time you get to go, oh, everything's going fine is 10 minutes.
Yeah.
There's another problem. So if we circle back to our growth times in Aylesbury, when it comes to suddenly we need to put on a permanent night shift, or we need to turn the factory from 24 hours, 5 days a week to 24/7, we genuinely couldn't afford people. We couldn't afford supervisors. And I know you wanted me to say this because you know that I've told you before back in the day. Fine, okay, we can't afford it. I'll do it. So for probably a 12-month period, me and my business partner worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Well, anybody listening to this saying, bullshit, you can't work 24 hours, 7 days a week. You can if you set up a bed in your office or in the warehouse. Over time, I think you've twisted slightly the story that I told you. I actually slept in my office. It was Neil that preferred to sleep in the warehouse. He used to set up a bed in the warehouse. but we could not afford night shift supervisors. So we worked our day job for 12, 13, 14 hours and then went and slept in the office. You know, I had to put makeshift curtains in my office because the factory was 24 hours. It was noisy. There were lights. I had to make my office dark.
Did the staff know?
Oh, yeah, of course they knew. Yeah, they made me coffee at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Wake up, Steve. Do you know what? Because for me, like
because we're a food producing
Yeah.
factory, we had again. This isn't what your podcast is about, but just to let you know, when you operate, there are certain things when you operate a food packaging factory that is unlike any other factory. So for a start, people that are on the shop floor packing trays that food's got to go into, they have to wear
it's like the
white smocks,
Yeah.
button-up smocks, hairnets, no jewellery, no makeup, no perfume, no pockets,
sanitized.
and therefore we can't touch those overalls. So every week, everybody had 3 sets of overalls. Every week they're collected by a food-approved dry cleaners. They come in the next day and they replenish everybody's individual locker with clean smocks that then people have an individual key and they put their smocks on and off they go. That is a huge cost. That is part of the entry-level costs to get involved in manufacturing packaging for the food industry.
What?
Because of that, we had huge changing rooms. And in those changing rooms, we had showers. So therefore, it might sound crazy for you or people listening to this. What? The MD slept in his office. Yeah, but every morning at 6 o'clock, I left my office, walked down to the changing rooms and had a shower. It was, the showers in the changing room.
It wasn't like being homeless. It was a requirement of you to be there in order to make sure the ship was running smoothly. Like if you're not
until we accumulated enough money to be able to employ. The other thing that I was managing to do was to build meaningful relationships with customers and with influencers. When I say influencers,
not like today's influencers.
No, I mean real ones, retailers.
Okay.
Who have the real influence in the chilled food industry. So I got particularly close to 2 UK retailers, Tesco and Marks and Spencer's.
Massive ones.
We traded with all of them anyway, but Tesco and Marks and Spencer's were the big ones. And I became close to one of the main board directors of Tesco, which is a very senior person, and they had pretty much saturated what they believed their growth in the UK was going to be. Mm-hmm. So they decided that they wanted to go overseas. So they moved to California and they created a brand called Fresh and Easy. So Tesco moved to California in 2005, 2006.
Just before the big financial crash, not long before that.
And I got a phone call from said director from California. It was all very highly secret, and he said, I'd like to speak to you, but before I speak to you, you need to sign some NDAs. He sent me some NDAs. He said, we're over in California. We're setting up 220 supermarkets on the West Coast, and the packaging industry in California is archaic and old-fashioned, and we want you to do all of our packaging in California. So we'd like you to come over. So he sent me a ticket, sitting at the right part of the plane, obviously.
Were you? Is that your first one?
First one. So I flew over with Eddie Izzard.
Really?
He was sitting next to me, bless him.
Wow.
Bit of a hero. I was worshipping.
Yeah.
I probably told him I paid for the tickets in some arrogant way. Oh yeah, I do this. I do this daily.
Yeah.
You know, when in fact
Well, third one today.
Yeah, when in fact, not only have I stolen the Virgin salt and pepper things, I'm trying to rip the telly off and take as many pictures as possible. Because you're excited. You know, I mean, I'm still like a kid, you know. So off I went. I spent a fortnight out in California with the exec board of Tesco, and we did just that. We were out there for 2 years. I had a team of people out there. We manufactured and designed everything in the UK, and we shipped it across to California. And it was exciting. And
how could you? Just a quick question, just on the finances side of it. How could you accommodate for the additional shipping costs in the? Did Tesco's wear that, or did your business wear that?
Shipping costs out to California at the time were about £3,500 for a high cube. A high cube is what you know is a shipping container. A high cube holds 52 pallets. It was about an extra 4% value on the load, so it wasn't prohibitive, and Tesco paid it.
Yeah, that's what I meant. You're like, because if your margins were already tight, that's like a...
Tesco paid it.
Good.
But they paid it... Again, it was an interesting thing.
Did you make margin on that?
Yeah.
Good.
What we did, because, again, this was an interesting... I'm still in my sponge-like, you know, at this point, I own my own business, but I'm still learning. I'm still learning from others, you know, and now this has taken me into a very senior level in how a retailer operates. So I'm suddenly one of the chosen few in meetings with directors of Tesco. You know, they had an office in a place called El Segundo, which is just outside Manhattan Beach in California. I had my own office in their offices. You know, I mean, I was only out there 3 months of the year. You know, the office wasn't used for 9 months, but it was still my office with my name on it. You know, I mean, they held us in such high regard.
Amazing.
And all of their California costs, they wanted to put in a separate accounting bin. So all of our additional costs to supply to California were invoiced as a separate cost. So our cost model stayed where it was. Our selling model stayed where it was. Any California additional costs were just invoiced to Tesco on a separate invoice. So it was just an in and out money. So we moved out there and we enjoyed that business for 2 years. Have a look. And Tesco then went bust.
Did they?
There's a shocker.
Did it go bust? Oh, 2008?
No, Tesco in the UK didn't go bust.
Tesco out there?
They put Fresh and Easy into Chapter 11.
Well, they're competing with 7-Eleven, Walmart, all them big nutters out there.
Yeah, and their biggest competitor on the West Coast was a retail group called Trader Joe's, which is a great food retailer.
I've heard of it.
Really, really good. I mean, America's so big, they have, apart from Walmart, which is national, they have regional retailers because it's such a big place. And Tesco underestimated the American customer. You know, in the UK, people like bespoke stuff, they like fresh stuff, they're quite happy to shop every other day. In America, they want to shop once a fortnight. You know, they want trolleys that are massive and load up their utility vehicles, and you know, they don't want to shop every day. Tesco didn't do that.
They don't like fresh stuff then as much.
No, Tesco
That's why their whole economy's so fat then, isn't it?
Yeah, Tesco underestimated their customer, and they gave it 2 years, hemorrhaged cost, and they went into Chapter 11 out there. Took us with them.
How was that? Because
How was that?
Well, I'm just trying to understand the model there, because You as a business,
I'll tell you how bad it was in a minute.
Well, you as a business went out there. You took the factory. You opened a new factory. You decked it out. No, you literally had a distribution.
We serviced it from the UK.
Okay.
We leased a distribution warehouse out in California, and we filled that from the UK, and that then shipped into the Fresh and Easy sites.
Yeah.
I think our UK business in Aylesbury was continuing to grow, and the Fresh and Easy side was, under the banner of Tesco, was a new arm to our business, which, if I look back, was a mistake of mine because I focused too much on Fresh and Easy, and I let the UK side, I didn't let it dwindle, that's wrong, but I didn't focus on the UK side as much as I should.
But it was a huge opportunity that you were focusing on, wasn't it? If you'd have got that right, that's game over, isn't it? If you'd have got that, if Tesco's have got that right, Fresh and Easy, and they'd have taken a big portion of the market out there, it's a no-brainer. You flipped a coin on that one, didn't you? Or am I wrong?
It got further than that, because during the time supplying Fresh and Easy out in California, it was quite apparent that for a period of time they were going to be paying our shipping costs. But at some point they were going to stop offering to pay our shipping costs, and we were probably going to have to manufacture out there. So I'd already started exploring manufacturing sites. So had Fresh and Easy continued, I probably personally would be in California now. I would have got rid of the UK business, moved everything to California, and I'd have stayed there.
And then built your business there.
Yep.
Supplying.
Because I loved it out there.
Oh,
why wouldn't I?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? It's California. Northampton or California.
I think I was single at the time as well. I mean, it's what's not to love.
Right. Making good money out in the world. Devilishly handsome. Cruising around in California with an English accent. Deadly weapon.
In my Mustang.
Yeah. Do you have a Mustang, did you?
Yeah. But I took my eye off the ball, and there is a theme in this podcast, and I don't want to dwell on it, but I am going to make a reference to it now. My focus on the business and my excitement and my work ethic and my dedication meant that other things suffer. It's not by chance that I'm not married with kids. It's not by chance that I don't have a stable home life, because I've swapped that for growing my businesses. Mm-hmm. I don't regret, and I have had some lovely relationships, some great relationships, but they've probably failed because of me, because of my focus on my business. So, things give, you can't do everything, and it's not a regret, but it's a fact. So circling back again to California.
Can I just touch on a point before you move on from there?
Sure.
One thing that's been a common theme for me as a 35-year-old man in several failed relationships is that what you mentioned there is the focus was elsewhere, so the relationship suffered. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs could potentially identify with this, because there's an inherent sense of value that comes in wanting to build something which I can't put a finger on myself. I have willingly and gone with the right intent of I'm going to try and make it for my family. I'm going to try and make it for my kids. I'm going to try and make it. But when you have the infrastructure of a family, your attempt to make it is inherently so risky that it doesn't leave either time or effort or energy, sometimes money, for the family. And that's an incredibly difficult thing for a lot of us to manage. So as you've demonstrated and mentioned, you weren't able to circumvent the value into the relationships to make it
It's a
Because it's not what you wanted to do. Is it ultimately a want, or was that a mistake?
It's a double. I don't think I was thinking. For me, it was just what I was doing was natural. Growing a business, being committed. I'll do that. I'll go there. No problem. I now know that when Tesco or Marks and Spencer's called me to a commercial review meeting at 4:45 on a Friday in their offices, I know now that was a punishment. At the time, no problem. It was a punishment because it was the 4:45 slot in Paddington Basin, M&S, on a Friday. And that meeting finished at 7:00. It's my Friday gone. But it didn't matter because I wasn't married with kids. So it's a double-edged sword, although I realise now and recognise that my relationship life has suffered because I put too much priority on my business. My business was successful because of that, because I was fluid and flexible enough to be able to do those things and didn't have to, God, we're meant to be going to.
Are there any regrets there? Are there any regrets there? Do you wish you focused on a relationship somewhat more? Was there one that got away that really flavoured it for you and you think, fucking hell, I should have tried harder or do more? Is there a time where you think, I wish I had kids to leave, if you don't mind me asking like personal questions like this?
No, I don't mind at all. Yeah, there is one that got away. That's all I'll say on that.
Sure, no, cool.
but yes, there is, and but I never wanted kids. I'm a godfather to 5 kids, and I when I tell people I didn't want kids, they think it's because I don't like kids. I do like kids.
You're always great with us. I mean, I always remember you coming.
I just didn't want them.
No.
But I love kids. I've got a niece and a nephew.
Yeah.
Who sadly I'm not close because my niece lives on the Scilly Isles, so we don't see each other very often. And my nephew's at an age where he's all over the place, living his best life, bless him. But we're still close.
Yeah.
We're not physically. We don't see each other as much as I would like.
Families aren't that way. People have this idea that, like, for me.
So kids. So in answer to your question, kids is the only thing I didn't want.
Right.
Albeit I like kids.
But a relationship and a marriage would have then come with, again, what comes with that is a prerequisite to have to think about somebody else before your business or the things you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, now's not the time for it, but I will answer your question. Yeah, there is one that got away.
Yeah.
But I was, I was enjoying growing the business. And I wasn't, even at this stage now, where I'm telling you about Fresh and Easy in California, I look back now and none of it was strategic. I only became strategic later. And even now when I'm retired, I'm more strategic than I was when I was working. Because you're always learning things. The California thing, I was perceptive enough to know that we had to manufacture out there because Tesco would not have continued paying our distribution costs from the UK to the West Coast of America. I knew that, and therefore I had that strategic move to manufacture out there. What I didn't see was them putting themselves in Chapter 11 and taking us with them and taking every other supplier with them. That was the start of the downfall of the Aylesbury business.
Let's look at that now. Because there were some really tough times you went through there.
Yeah, we went bust.
Really?
It doesn't get tougher than that. Because we didn't react quick enough because we were in uncharted waters. So up until this point, super successful, growing business, growing its assets, growing its balance sheet. Me and my business partner having all the trappings, We were profitable enough. Therefore, we were paying ourselves majority in dividends to, claw back as many tax offsets legally. Albeit a bit close to the wire occasionally.
It has to be, though. Like we're playing that game. That's what business is, isn't it?
So all of that going well. And then when things start going bad, you have to react. And because things hadn't gone bad, we didn't react quick enough. So Fresh and Easy caused us a problem by sucking some value out of our balance sheet and our P&L because they went Chapter 11. So we severed all ties and we then refocused on the UK. We then lost a massive customer, and I don't know why we lost them. We lost them, I suspect, although it's unsavoury for me to admit this, I suspect we lost them because of me, because I didn't have as much of a focus on the UK at the time as I should have.
Yeah.
That was a third of our turnover.
Shit.
We lost overnight.
And at what point was the turnover at that time? So
11,
right.
11 and a half.
So you lost a good 3, 4, 3.
Yeah. I look back now and I know what we should have done. I absolutely know what we should have done. We should have killed at least 2 of the shifts. We should have killed the night shift, killed one of the day shifts, downsized the business, culled staff, and ridden that storm and resized the business commensurate with its new turnover. Without question.
That's what you do, yeah.
That's what you do.
Because the overheads exceed the turnover.
We didn't. We kept the overheads. Yeah. We thought we could trade out of it. Why wouldn't we? We've done it before. We'll bolster new customers on. So we did. But margins were tough. Margins were tight. We then were extending our creditor days. Our debtors days were looking fairly poor. We were running out of cash. In a manufacturing business, cash is king. Cash. In a lot of other businesses, it's not so. I mean, everybody says cash is king, cash is king. I disagree with that. In certain businesses, it's not that important. In a manufacturing business, because you've got so many creditors, numerous creditors to run a manufacturing business, all the different components that you're buying in every day, every week, every month. You've got even in a fairly small manufacturing business, you've probably got 150 creditors. We probably had about 300 or 400. Call them suppliers, if you like.
Yeah, I understand. I know
you
the
lingo. And we were losing. We were drowning in debt because we'd not downsized the business. So we had a tough call to make. Because at that point, the bank was breathing down our necks. Banks are fucking ruthless.
They're horrible, mate.
Banks, I've been on both sides of banks in my career. I've been on banks that are gagging to give us money, that want to keep giving us money, that throw away the rule book, that see your growth, see your gross margin, never worried about your net margin. That's not that important. They want to see that you've got a strong balance sheet. If you've got a strong balance sheet, they're throwing money at you. And the minute there's blood in the water, they are ruthless, absolutely ruthless. So I had no choice but to be fairly ruthless, which I'm not, proud is the wrong word. You do desperate things when you're a business owner. I had never any problem in borrowing money off people. I was always going to pay it back, and money has different values, throughout your career. When you're growing a business, money is just a commodity. You don't want money because of money's sake. You want it because you need to convert that into sales and profit. In order to do that, you need money to buy that shiny thing with buttons and switches and stuff, So we got to a situation where the bank was breathing down our neck. We hadn't reacted quick enough. So I needed to sell the business, and quickly. So I started marketing the business to 3 or 4 competitors that we were close to, because at this point I'm at the peak of my career. Within my chosen industry, I'm a name. I'm a well-known person. My business has got a great reputation. It's respected by customers, competitors, and retailers alike. So it's got value in it. So in the end, we sold the business to a firm down in Somerset. But in order to maximise the sale price, we put the business into a pre-packed administrative state, and we effectively ring-fenced off the debt, and we sold the assets and then re-phoenixed it out. We paid back the majority of the debt to existing creditors. We weren't, we didn't sail off into the sunset.
It's all a thing that has to be done, isn't it?
It was a strategic move.
It's all you've got in business, isn't it? Strategy.
That this was being done over 24 hours a day for 3 or 4 weeks. I just didn't sleep. It was phone calls, creditors, banks. I was refusing to take them because I was trying to strike a deal to sell the business. It was...
And when was this? What year was this?
2007, 8. It had nothing to do with the financial crash. That was just coincidental.
Yeah.
This was poor management on my part and taking my eye off the UK focus, because I was focusing too much on the glitzy, fresh and easy California thing. And then we lost a customer because of that same reason.
Sure. So then...
Horrible time. Horrible time.
I've been through some very, very similar times, not in the magnitude.
We kept all the staff.
Yeah.
Apart from my business partner.
Amazing. So did he make an exit?
No.
Okay. Oh, did he? Is he?
He's alive.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That got a bit ominous then. I thought you'd
he doesn't really talk to me.
Oh, right. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay, sure.
He was a casualty. He had to be a casualty
Of the business, yeah.
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 And you get into those sort of situations, and the company that you're selling to, this they will we absolutely want you, and we want your business, and we want you, Steve. We want you on our board. So obviously that's what I wanted to do. But we don't want that guy. So you need to do something about it. That's big boy stuff, isn't it? That's
the stuff.
That's character building.
But that's the stuff that...
That's me and you in business together, and the business has gone very poor, and we broker a deal,
But I'm not in it. Yeah.
And the deal is, we're going to have you, Steve. We want the business, but we don't want Liam, and therefore we're not going to buy the greater good and invite you on as a shareholding director. So you need to make that happen. Now, I would not have done that. He's financially okay. We weren't horrible about it, but he possibly would now. But at the time, he probably felt that he was wrongly dealt with, but he wasn't capable of the business growth in where we were taking it.
Okay,
and that's really what happened. So suddenly, we are now a multi-site business, turning over, 45 million in 2007,
okay,
2008. That's hard work.
I think
running 2 sites is hard work.
I bet it is. I mean, because your operational role then was across to both sites. And you were operations of all?
We had fudgy sort of titles, but yeah, pretty much.
Operation and sales, or just sales, or just
commercial?
Operation? So all the commercial side. So you just did everything.
Yeah.
Not
But
the
running
accountant.
2 sites is very, very difficult. It's a very difficult thing.
Yeah, because one you're not at
not
any
that.
one time.
It's not that. It's the financials, because there are things that example. I know you like cars, so I'll use this as an example. So a BMW garage in Lincoln, in sleepy little Lincoln, versus a BMW garage on Park Lane, the fixed costs of Park Lane are far more than the fixed costs of Lincoln, yet the sales price of the car at either garage is identical. BMW do not allow Park Lane BMW to put a £3,000 premium on a 5 Series BMW,
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
despite the fact that their fixed costs are far greater.
Yeah.
So therefore their margins are worse, but it's not their fault. It's because they need to have a location in London. You run 2 different sites and your cost base is very different, but your selling price, because you're in the same market, is exactly the same. Therefore, multi-site operations are very, very difficult. You know, salaries are difficult.
So was there like a parent operation that combined the income of all, or were they run as separate sites? Or
We structured it in a way that we ran them as separate sites, but then we also created a holding company.
Yeah.
So each of the sites paid a fee and a dividend to the holding company. So we, at any one time, we could see what the true performance of the sites were. The rest I can condense into 5 minutes, really. Okay. So let me just circle back to the theme. The theme of this about me is an inquisitive guy who was sponge-like, that always wanted to dismantle things physically, mentally, and understand how things worked. I've now had failure. I'm never going to do that again. You know, most people, you don't get measured by your failures, but my God, you need some failures to realize the pain, to make sure you're never going to go there again.
Mm.
Suddenly, we are a very large business in the food packaging, you know, with business partners. And in 2014, we're just growing the business. We're doing really well. We're very profitable. We're bolting on. We're now manufacturing our own film. We're not buying it in. We're extruding it ourselves. We've got our own design studio. We're part making some of our own tooling. We're a proper integrated business with a very, very good reputation. We didn't want to buy him out because the value of the business was too great, and I was tired of borrowing money at that point and growing, and so we decided to sell the business.
So where you mentioned there, just, I mean, again, from a lender's perspective and a broker's perspective, realistically, over time, you've leveraged other people's money on a repeat basis to build the business up to where you've done. Have you purchased machinery or like cash flow? Like, have you ever used any? So it sounds like you've used other people's money quite a bit, or is that
extensively?
Okay,
extensively.
Do you think you could have done it without it?
No way. No way.
Yeah. Okay.
Why are you smiling?
Well, because
you wanted me to say that, didn't you?
But the industry that I work in, right? The world has got this terminology against debt. Debt is seen as bad because we have this idea of debt being the commercial, the non-commercial version is the retail version of credit card, filled up, going to fucking Spain, waxing it, coming back, and then your own income has got to qualify that debt. But with a business, if you're taking 500 grand, bringing it into the company, and then turning that into 2.2, that's a cash flowing exercise. Like one of the manufacturing firms I worked with, right? I got him a 500k loan. I got him 2 facilities, two of 250. And he initially came in for 250, right? But the beauty of it was we got 2 approvals, and he was like, yeah, okay, I'll take them. He combined that, so he had 1 monthly cost, and what he did was he took 125 grand, went out to his suppliers, his creditors. He purchased his materials, his raw materials, in much vaster quantities than he ever would. Brought that all in, and he saved 25% in margin on just that one exercise, right? Which mitigated all of his interest. So then he's got another 375k to drive into the market and drive into the business, drive into the growth, the staff and stuff like that. And to me, when you say you couldn't have done it and extensively, I know when my thinking around the industry that I'm in is correct, because it just works that.
I know you didn't give me a brief for this, but I had a rough idea of what you wanted, and this was what you want to tap into is an entrepreneurial way of thinking and how they've grown or exited their business. And so I've tried to give you, although I've rambled on a lot, it's been quite a broad brush to show you how I work and what I've sacrificed and how I've done it. I could easily do another podcast with you on the financials behind it, which might be more interesting for another day. And I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, sure.
Now, what I will say to you is, in answer to your question, because I saw you smiling, because clearly I know why you wanted me to say that.
I didn't want you to say it for my benefit.
No, I know.
The answer was,
I didn't mean
it qualified my.
I didn't mean you've given me a pre-read. And please,
sure you say.
No, I didn't mean that. But I know you well enough, and I know what you do. For your main work and your main income, and I know what your passions are in growing that side of things. And it's that there is no doubt, absolutely no doubt, that our income stream in our business was leveraged. Without question, and it was leveraged through debt. We had no choice but to do that, and I loved doing that. Mm-hmm. Thankfully our balance sheet was strong, but our debt profile was huge. We serviced the debt without any problem at all. But on an average, over the last 10 years, I would say our average CapEx was about £1 million a year.
Right.
And of that million, 750 was funded. 250 was self-funded out of working capital. 3/4 of it, 3/4 of all of our CapEx was funded.
You see, this is what I think sometimes businesses get.
And we were prostitutes. We'd borrow from anywhere.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you use invoice finance or anything?
We absolutely used invoice financing, yeah. Not factoring, but CID.
CID, confidential.
Yeah.
Invoice discount.
So
just so you know.
Sorry, yeah.
Confidential invoice discounting.
As opposed to CID.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Didn't mean it.
We absolutely used it. But we only used it. You obviously know how it works, and your fees are commensurate on how much of your debtor's book you borrowed. We only borrowed up to 70% of our debtor's book.
Sure, yeah.
And the reason we only borrowed up to 70% of our debtor's book, because 99% of our debtor's book was blue chip, was retailers.
And there's the problem with the blue chips is that when I see this in any other industry...
But we used it, and we used it all the time.
Well, it's done against them, isn't it? Not necessarily against you. These invoice finance lines, in some respects.
I don't know why people wouldn't. The fact that we were invoicing north of 5 million a month. In direct.
Yeah, waiting 60 days or 90 days for that, are you?
70% of 5 million. If my finance director wanted 70% of 5 million, he can have it every 30 days. It's a wonder he did any work. Let me just make a note of that.
Yeah.
So we then sold the business.
Now, when you sold the business, how was that structured? Was it a larger entity that bought the company, or was there an MBO, or was it? How is it? Because they're
We were too big for an MBO.
okay.
You know, an MBO wouldn't have worked. So we had advisors, a company called Baker Tilly. Some of the details, I'd rather not go into the
No, you
detail,
don't need to
but
do.
I'll go into the process. The process is, you know, teasers go out, IMs go out, information memorandums. You then hone it down. We honed it down to 3 people. We had what they call a beauty parade. So the beauty parade was in our advisor's office, which happens to be in Bristol. So we present to the 3 different people that want to buy us.
At the same time? Or?
No.
Yeah, you can't have them in the same room, can you?
No, each one had a 2-day window. So it was done over 6 days. One of them was a privately owned French company. And the other 2 were American private equity backed businesses who got into a bit of a bidding war for us.
Wow.
Lucky.
That's a nice position to be in, isn't it? Because you're watching the figure go up and up and up.
And we sold to American private equity, of which the 4 of us were given a token role in the business. The sale process is brutal.
Did you still get paid from your token role? So you had effectively an employed status in that?
Selling a business is brutal. You know, their job is to insult you, question why you've done this.
It's like selling a car, isn't it? They want to kick the tyres and they want there's scratches here, dents.
It's
yeah.
brutal.
Yeah.
But your advisors tell you it's going to be brutal, and they veneer you, they protect you from that. But so we have to present, you know, and it's difficult. You know, it's hard work. Now, we were selling, you know, a well-funded, profitable business. So it wasn't a distressed business. So we were still in control. We didn't have to go through it. Anyway, in the end, yes, so we all had token roles. We were paid a salary.
What was the value of the business when they agreed to sell it, if you don't mind my asking, or is that a confidential figure?
It's confidential because
Sure.
of NDAs.
Okay.
But we sold it on an EBITDA multiple. Do you know what that means? Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah.
You looked at me as if you wanted me to say more.
So I understand EBITDA, and you know the model for our business at some point is once EBITDA reaches a certain figure, we get a different multiple because ours is a version of tech.
Okay, so we sold on adjusted EBITDA, which basically means they allowed us to take all of our remunerations out of the P&L and the balance sheet and re-add it back into EBITDA. Although they were going to employ us, so we then got a multiple of that. So we got a very high, I don't know what manufacturing gets now, 9-10% multiple, do they?
Yeah, 9 or 10%.
As a multiple.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Sorry, not percent, 9 or 10
10 times, yeah.
I don't know what it is now.
10x. And
what is it now?
manufacturing would be lovely.
North of 4.5 mil.
So then you've got the quick maths.
So we did all right.
It's a lot, yeah. I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, and I'll say this.
It's a lot.
I'll say this to you.
It's a lot. At that point, there were two higher shareholders than me and the other guy. You know, but it was still a lot. So anyway, so I then so the others buggered off fairly quickly, and I stayed for 3 years because I wanted to work for private equity. And
did you do lots of learning from there as well?
It's horrible.
Is it? Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. So
it's horrible.
All in all,
they're only interested in cash.
Yeah. Well, that's what equity is, isn't it?
And they just destroy businesses.
Yeah.
Because there's quick ways to generate cash. One of them is salary. So therefore, salary culls, generates cash quickly. So therefore, you know, if you're employing 400 people, you know, they'll get rid of 100.
Yeah.
Because it gives them cash. But it means the 300 that are left have got to work
Twice
1.33 times as hard. So therefore, it creates unrest. The other way to generate cash is they'll get rid of your finished goods stock and your raw material stock because that's cash. So get rid of that. But of course, your service levels are then appalling because you can't supply customers out of finished goods stock because you don't have any. So suddenly your service levels start dropping, so you start losing business. It is ruthless. It's horrible. So that's when I left.
Yeah, bye, thanks. So to sort of summarise, first of all, just thank you for the depth of conversation. I think I knew it was going to be a great conversation. To the degree of depth that we've managed to reach here, we've never managed to go that deep before, because me and you will sit and we'll end up, because we can go on a tangent and we'll just end up on some conversation.
You've let me talk, which is great, and I apologise because I felt that I've talked too much.
You're being interviewed. It's what you're here for.
Okay.
It's a conversation about you. Okay, we've reached on me a few times, but this is a conversation about you, because ultimately the Real Roadmap podcast is about me learning from you and sharing that information with the world, because that is where the value is. This is just me being vulnerable and being willing and open enough to say I'm ready to learn. And in that vein, if there was 3 pieces of information, taking that you know me out of it, if you were to bottle 3 traits that you would say, work on these and this will directly impact your business or your capacity to grow a business, what would those 3 things be if you were talking to Steve 20 years ago?
First one's easy. Every decision you make for the good of the business, not you. Sounds obvious. So many people don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're faced with a tough decision, make it for the good of the business. Forget about you.
Take you out of that decision.
Take you out of it totally. Make yourself, every tough decision, focus on, is this the right decision for the business? It really comes into its own if you're not sure whether to sack somebody, make redundant, whatever, because it's a horrible, painful thing.
Yeah.
Remove yourself and go, if I got rid of it, is it the right thing for the business? It makes your decision so much easier when you think like that.
Okay.
That's the first thing. Second thing, it's much harder. Make yourself, and you'll struggle with this, but it's still sound advice. Make yourself financially independent from your business as quick as you can. So you're not reliant on the business paying your mortgage. You've got enough accumulated wealth out of the business that you're financially independent from your business, because you'll make far better decisions for the business. If every decision you make for the business is because you need the money for that, you make poor decisions.
Okay.
And the third one is just ruthless dedication. Just hard work, dedication. You'll go grey.
Yeah, that happened for you ages ago, didn't it?
Exactly.
One thing I want to touch on, just before we wrap this up, because I'm aware we've been over 2 hours.
Cars.
Yeah, the one thing that I always remember is Steve Pullen. You would come round when we were kids and you would bring us a card with a Virgin voucher in it. Yeah. And you would always turn up. You would hear you come in and it'd always be a Lambo. And the one Lambo I remember is the one where you had silver stitched into the seats.
Yeah.
What was your biggest and greatest external achievement that you created, that from all of the graft, all of the effort, all of the energy that you paid in? What was the one time you got in that car, or what was the one experience you got in and you did and you went, haha, worth every second? Was there a moment like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Things like Lamborghinis you can take them away from him, not interested. That's a fading memory. I probably enjoyed it at the time, but irrelevant. But I suppose the first seminal moment, of success was cars. And it was the first time that I bought what I considered to be a proper car, which was a 911 Porsche.
I remember it.
And it was blue, and I was 30. And I bought it from Porsche Reading. And I taxied down, and I had the playlist CD that I'd burnt the night before.
Burning a CD, these lot won't understand that these days. It wasn't even that long ago.
That's what I had.
Wow.
Because because it was my first proper car. The rest was sort of just incremental, which sounds really flash. But don't get me wrong, every bell and whistle, every car, watch, that sort of thing, I still get excitement in getting it. If you don't get excitement, you shouldn't be spending the money. And I don't mind admitting that. But the very first one was the Porsche, yeah.
Amazing. Steve, I can't thank you enough for coming off. It was a bit of an emergency for me. I'm so grateful that you filled the slot. We've got some really amazing interviews lined up with some fantastic entrepreneurs from all different types of industries. So